Okay, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so here we are. We are in workshop number 5 for the VIP Sketch to Story Drawing Workshops. Let's go ahead and remind us of our mission here at Sankofa Animation Network. Our mission is to exist to uplift Black and Brown communities through animated film, faith-centered storytelling, and creative education, building a global community where underrepresented voices are nurtured, empowered, and seen. All right. And the African proverb of today is it is not only giants that do great things. Not only giants do great things. I thought that was cool because it's true that even the small folk, you could tell I've been watching Game of Thrones, are able to do extraordinary things. It's not only the people who are the most powerful or physically largest or who seem like they might be the most like overwhelming or over whatever you want to say. It's not only those people. Like sometimes just as regular people can make a big difference. All right, so what are we talking about in our week 5? We are looking at antagonists. Antagonists. And this is kind of exciting because we all love the bad guys. We need somebody to to dislike, to not be on our side. And so we're going to look at the definition for antagonist, which is a character. An antagonist is a character group or force that goes against the main character, the protagonist, creating the central conflict and tension in the story. So they're creating that conflict, that tension. They're just kind of upping the stakes. They're making things worse for the protagonist. So they don't necessarily have to be a character, even though we are looking at character types. They can be a force of nature. They can be like an over imposing parent or boss or someone like of that nature. It could be a creature or a monster, or it could be like a spiritual force, something that is making things more challenging for our protagonists. And let's go ahead and look at some antagonists. All right, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to sketch some popular antagonists in film and actually one from television. We only have a few that we're going to be doing today as our preparation because we're actually going to be building an antagonist today. So I hope that you did the homework challenges from the weeks before because you're going to need that for this part because we're building off of that. You can't really have an antagonist if you don't have a protagonist and you don't have like, that central like person to follow, that central character to follow, because that's who we're basing our antagonist off of, okay? So the questions that we're looking at are what makes someone an effective antagonist? What makes someone an effective antagonist? And can we understand an antagonist without agreeing with them? Because, let's be real, like sometimes antagonists are relatable, even though we don't necessarily want to be like them or we don't agree with what they're doing, we can still sometimes see from their perspectives or not. So let's see if we can see from from their perspectives, and we're going to talk about that right now. Okay, so let's go into our poses. We're actually doing 10-minute poses today. We're going a little bit longer because I want to actually get into a little bit of like realism here. Let's kind of like really look at our antagonists and kind of see them a little bit deeper. This is a very popular one from a very famous film, The Dark Knight. We're looking at the Joker, played by Heath Ledger, and I really think he was the best Joker. I mean, I don't know, you may think differently, but I think that Heath Ledger like really brought a whole new sense of realism and believability to that character. I think that he made it super engaging for the audience. I'm gonna see. I think that he just brought a different take that just felt like it just felt darker, and it felt like, it fits with the whole Batman world because, the world of Batman, the whole idea, the concept of Gotham, I think is dark and brooding and, kind of like this. dark place, and I do think that, man, he really brought something special to that role. So let's kind of study him a little bit. What are some characteristics and things that we see just looking at his physical appearance? We see already that menacing sort of a look in his eye, that menacing sort of a something's something looks off here, like something's not right. Something is certainly going on with this guy, and he's not, it doesn't look like he's a friendly person. Right? We just look at him right off the bat. He doesn't appear to be friendly. He doesn't seem, well, obviously he's wearing this um very extreme makeup on his face. What are some other things that we can notice about him? He is in a very strange sort of, he's holding his body in a strange way. Like he's not holding his body like we would, like an average person would. Just like if you saw someone just standing like this in the grocery store, you'd be like, all right, what the hell is really going on here? You'd be like, oh, I think this person is probably going through something or up to no good, or you would think something about this person if you just saw them in the street. And so those are the types of little things that we want to notice when we're doing these little sketches. Well, not little, but you know what I mean. When we're doing these sketches in preparation for our antagonist character, we're going to want to notice things about this antagonist, notice things that seem like, this person, this character is perhaps doesn't have the best intentions in mind. Perhaps they are not looking for our best interests. Perhaps they look a little bit scary. Like, what is it that looks scary about them? They don't have to necessarily be intimidating physically, but they can still have something about them that feels something about them that just feels like either something's off or this person is like ill-intended, would be one way to describe it. All right. And I'm just gonna keep going. You can choose either one of these images to sketch. You don't have to choose one or the other. I just like to have a little bit of variety. Helps you kind of see the character a little bit more fully. I don't know why my pencil's acting a little bit weird, but I think it's a little bit off. But I want to kind of try and see where we can get with this. And I'll be taking away as I do so, since I'm trying to get it to be a little bit more lifelike than the previous one. So we did some animation studies before, but I think it's good even when you're doing, even when you are planning for an animation or something that's more cartooned or caricatured. I think it's good to look at some realistic references as well. You want to get some references that are gonna make you push your designs and think a little bit more deeply about your designs, like what would be sort of a realistic version of what you're creating. I think that can help you, like understanding the real, I think is always the best um practice for creating caricature and those types of things. All right, so I'm gonna go a little bit farther into his design here. Now that I'm looking, I'm seeing that his head is starting further back, and I was just doing his face to start. Now I want to get a little bit more. And still thinking about like basic shapes. You don't have to, even when they have like wild hairstyles or their hair is going off in different directions, you still want to have an understanding of what the basic shapes of those are. So I don't want to make his head um not readable in any way. And you can even see some of the muscles on his head and on his forehead, and those like frown lines. Like you can see this person is not happy. All right. Let's see. All right. So, what are they thinking? That's a good thing to ponder too. Like, what is this antagonist thinking? You don't want to make an empty protagonist. I mean, empty antagonist. You don't make an empty protagonist either. But when you're thinking about an antagonist, it's not just a soulless being most of the time. You're gonna, especially if you're creating a human or like uh, a humanized character, you want to make sure that they actually have like feelings. They have like real feelings and they're like, and you want to think about them in that way. It makes them more believable, especially, you don't want them to just be just blink. Like they have to have some type of a motive, like why? Why are they this way? What created them to be this way? And I think there's a few times where, the Joker in the Dark Knight will kind of talk about his little backstory a little bit and how he got his scars. And I think he does change his story, but we know that he has those scars for a reason and that he's probably a traumatized child grown up, living in this adult body that has these unhealed wounds. So let's see. And maybe we want to think about his makeup that he's wearing. Yeah, this is like probably the most realism that we've done so far. But I really want us to start to think, a little bit deeply about some of these characters. Because a strong character, God, makes such a difference. You don't want to have like a empty antagonist. You want to have them like you want to actually be scared or like you want them to ignite it, like give those actual real feelings. Like I think that is really, really important that your antagonist is giving us because otherwise it's like, all right, if there's no threat to your protagonist, there's really not much to follow. If everything is like if something happens, your protagonist is in some type of scenario and nothing is challenging them, there's no pushback, then you don't really have a story. And so that's why it's really important to start to think, all right, how can I make it so that it's very hard for my protagonist to get to get through their problem, to get through their scenario, which we'll talk about in a little bit since we haven't covered scenarios yet, but we'll talk about that. We'll begin that conversation today. And even what is the scenario? Just putting your protagonist in a situation that is not ideal for them. Essentially, that is what creating a scenario is. All right. And that is our first timer. So let's go ahead and just give him that. So we have our Joker character. Okay. We're moving on to our next antagonist. Oh my gosh. I don't even want to look at his eyes. It's like so creepy. This is a throwback. This one is a throwback. Early 90s, Silence of the Lambs. But I think that most people, especially film lovers, will recognize Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal Lecter is one of those guys. Let me take a sip of my water. He's just one of those guys that kind of stick with you and he keeps showing up. There are a couple of like sequels and spin-offs to this. Like I know there was that movie Hannibal. That one is like really, really creepy. I think I only watched that one once because it was creepy. But um yes, Hannibal Lecter is a scary looking dude and is and the way the actor Anthony Hopkins played the part so well. I mean, just like Heath Ledger played that part so well. And man, you gotta wonder. I think it's a definite psych trick to be able to play a villain that powerfully. And gosh, there's got to be some ways for them to do it, and I hope that they are able to do it in a healthy way and not like become that or like have their mind go into that dark. I don't know. What does it take for an actor? That's like a whole other conversation. What does it take for an actor? But as a writer and as as creating the character, you're becoming a writer. Like the act of creating characters, like original characters is a writing process. So if you haven't thought of yourself as a writer, but you create characters, it's time to start thinking of yourself as a writer because it is the writer's role to create original characters. So uh, this one, this one is, whew, he's creepy looking, huh? He's and no offense to the actor, but just the way that he holds his face, that downward, and I need to like make sure that I'm putting him in that downward. Because he's like he has this way that he's looking almost like what Princess Diana did, but not doing it in her charming way, doing it in this really um creeped out way. I don't know if I ever realized that he does the same sort of thing that Princess Diana does, but the way he does it is very, very different. Like the head down, but with the eyes facing up. Um, that's a tactic, and I'm sure that the actor came up with that on his own, um, to embody this evil that he's playing in some way. But as a designer and as the creator of these characters, you are doing the acting part too. So you need to think like, in a sense, you need to think like an actor, like, all right, well, how can I pose this character to make them look very intimidating or very like they will do harm if you can do it well. And there are examples in animation and in comics where the characters do this. Well, there's some that are really, really scary. I mean, there's even video games too that are like, I don't even want to play because they're like scary. I remember like when Resident Evil was popular when I was in high school. I didn't even want to play because the freaking monsters look so scary and it was they pop up out of nowhere and stuff. And those are good reference points, even though they're like hard to look at. Some of those things are really good reference points because they can help you to kind of think about like, the types of things that invoke those feelings of fear, the types of things, images, lighting, the character designs, even though they're monsters, they're still character designs. And there might be like a central character, especially I think if you're um doing like monsters like that don't have feelings like zombies, there has to be like a antagonizing force that's kind of like the lead thing. Like maybe it's a outbreak of a disease that is like, and it's evil that's spreading. That could be your antagonizing force when you think about it. Like and I don't know if you've ever seen like that miniseries, The Stand by Stephen King wrote the original book and it became a miniseries, and I think they remade it again. They did actually. I haven't seen the remake, but I loved the original. But yes, you have the disease and it's killing everybody, but behind that is really the source of evil, which actually, is like really like they personified it into like this devil character. So you want to think even if you have like um monster type characters, what is the force that is behind those characters, you want to maybe think about stuff like that. And I think too, like the menacing brows with like the little smile makes it even more like this guy is like enjoying the act of scaring you. He's enjoying making you feel uncomfortable, which is like feels like wicked in itself. So that can make it even much more scary. Let's see. I'm gonna pull this down. I'm not a portrait artist at all, so I don't know why I chose to do these portraits. But I just want us to, like I said, I want us to think about these and think like about how they hold their face, how do they hold their body language, so that we can think about those things when we're doing our antagonist characters. Okay, so Mr. Hannibal. I don't think I'm answering like the prompting questions at all, but I'm just getting into this whole topic of antagonists. But let's see. I'm gonna go back up 1 second and look at what makes someone an effective antagonist. Effective. I think Hannibal Lecter does right here. It looks like he enjoys scaring people. He enjoys like making people he has no desire to be your friend. But what's his he's kind of one of those villains that I would say falls into the insane category, like Michael Myers. They don't really have a soul. They don't feel guilty for what they're doing. So what is that? I mean, when you have something like that, and you have a character that's just kind of like what I call evil incarnate in character archetypes. That is one of the character archetypes that I put into sketch to story, and there's a whole list of different archetypes. But that one is one because there's sometimes where it's just like it feels like they're just an evil, like the character itself is just like an evil force. But that feels real when they're not like a regular person. They're not they're kind of like soulless in a sense, which is kind of creepy in itself. Just that whole concept is pretty creepy in itself. These characters are intimidating, but they're intimidating for a reason. His chin goes further down. I feel like I'm doing like a like a police sketch or something. But let's see if we can get some of those details that are also making him creepy, like the lighting definitely. And the fact that he is behind bars makes it more creepy too. Just like, okay, like obviously he's a bad guy or not a good guy. All right. His head definitely too is much far bigger, but we can't see where it's going because of it's cut off. But I'm just gonna take that part out. And I hope I did set a timer. I didn't. All right, well, that's okay. I'm gonna be done with him in just a second. All right, so he does have that dark lighting. Um, let's see. These dark sort of shadows. But he looks like a villain. Like he feels like really freaking creepy, right? He feels like not the person you want to see, you know, in a dark alley or in a parking lot ever. Doesn't look like the person you want to see ever. Okay, so that is our Hannibal Lecter character. All right, thank you, Anthony Hopkins, for your contribution to our nightmares. All right. All right. And also like with the high back, I think they did that in both characters with the this sort of a high back sort of a look. Right. Let's save this and I keep going to our final villain, Cersei Lannister. So this just goes to show you that a villain does not necessarily have to be unattractive. They don't have to be necessarily intimidating immediately. They can show you how intimidating they are by their actions. And I'm gonna set another timer for her. And Cersei. Cersei, like we can kind of see it in these looks too, even though it's not as obvious. We can still like once we see her actually in action, the physical makes more sense because then we see that like yes, she's beautiful, but also she's incredibly cold. Like incredibly cold. We can see that. One of the things that I really love about this series is that we can interface this actually quite a bit wider than this. We can actually see why she became this way because not off the bat. It doesn't really go into like it doesn't start with her being good and then she eventually becomes evil. But if you listen to the story arc and you listen to where it goes, then she pretty much tells us like why she is the way she is. Like we see it in her husband's actions. We see that her husband never loved her. And she wanted to have a good marriage initially, but we see that she never was treated with respect by her husband. We see that she was constantly cheated on, like constantly, like blatantly cheated on. And we also see that her husband was wanted to marry someone else. He wanted to marry um the Stark, um, the Stark's wife, the Stark's sister. What's his name? Ned Stark's sister. I don't remember what the actual woman's name was, but she died. I think she died in childbirth. But anyway, yeah, that's what happened. Like he wanted to marry one woman, he got another woman and treated her very badly. And she couldn't get herself out of it, so she just essentially became cold and decided that she was going to have a relationship with her brother. That's not the normal reaction, but it does tie into that second question we have of can we understand an antagonist without agreeing with them? And I think for Cersei we can. We can understand that her character when we start to hear her backstory, when we start to understand um, why she became the way that she came, and the fact that she does have one good quality. And her only good quality is that she's a very, very protective mother. She loves her kids. We know that she loves her kids. Even if she's not a good mother, but we know that she loves her kids and she's very protective of them, all of them. And then they all end up dying, which makes her even more of a villain, which makes us more understanding of why she's a villain when her children are dying. Of course, she's gonna be angry and, but the way that she deals with that anger is not in a healthy way necessarily. She's like, trying to just make other people suffer for her suffering. That's not necessarily the healthiest way to deal with anger, but we get that that's part of the character that she is. Now unlock this and change a little bit here. Okay. So what else do we know about Cersei? How else can we like I don't know, there's just something about the way her eyebrows are, maybe even just always a little bit tight. Because I mean she is beautiful always, but we can still see that she's just has that sort of coldness. And I do think a lot of it is in the tenseness of her eyebrows. She's always got like even just this area right here is always a little bit tense. It always feels, even when she's smiling in that picture on the left there, it still feels like her eyebrows are a little bit tense. Like she's like not really happy. She's never really happy, and I think that's it. That's one thing that we can see in her is that she's just her smile is forced. She's not happy. She's just dealing with life. She's dealing with life. She knows that she's beautiful, and she knows that's one of her powers that she has, but she knows that it's not what is going to um, give her power with her husband. And I think maybe that's part of her frustration is even though she has a power from her beauty, it doesn't work over her husband. And I think that's part of her frustration is she feels powerless in that sense. Okay. Even this one is a little bit down. Like she's only half smiling. Mm. Let's see. I'm actually came out okay. I tell you, I do not do portraits, but this has been a challenge, a nice little challenge for me. So, would you make your antagonist be a beautiful or very handsome character, like when you think about an American Psycho, or like in real life? I think it was that guy Ted Bundy, who was like well, this handsome, apparently guy who was a monster on the inside. So that can happen. You don't have to make them necessarily be physically unattractive, but they're they have this thing in them that is very ugly and not attractive. All right, let me see if I can put at least some of her hair in. Tell Cersei, I want her to know it was me. I saw a meme the other day where it had that had that same lady. What is her name? Ah, I don't remember what the older woman's name was that said that line. It's right at the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember for whatever reason right now. But anyway, it had the face of sheep stealer and it said tell Rhaenyra, I want her to know it was me. And I thought it was the funniest thing. I just thought it was so funny. But anyway, I guess you have to you have to watch Game of Thrones to get it. And you have to watch House of the Dragon. So if you don't watch those series, I would recommend them. Anyway, um, let's see. Even covering the face a little bit, like that little bit of covering the face, just a little bit of age that she has. It's like not much, but it's just a little bit of line. She reminds me of someone in real life that I will not say, but she does remind me of someone in real life. But that's the thing. If you have some people in real life that can inspire your characters, then that's a good thing. Let them inspire. No one ever has to really know who you're basing your characters off of. This is for you. This is like you're doing your own studies, you're doing your own um I don't like that line underneath. You're doing your own means of figuring out your inspirations and what is making you able to make believable characters. And a lot of that is our life experience. We do get a lot of like great ideas from movies and from films, but so much of it, so much more of it is from our own life experiences and how we use those to inform our characters, inform our stories, inform why they behave the way they do, our characters, why they behave the way they do, and what their motives are. Like, why would they want to destroy the protagonist's life? We need, why do they want to make the protagonist's life so much more challenging and difficult? Um, we kind of can understand those types of things when we look at our own stories and see this is the I actually have an antagonist in my story, you might say, in my own life story, you might say, and use that as a I think in life we have multiple antagonists, don't we? There's like every stage of life has a different type of antagonist. We can use real people to inspire us. All right, there goes Cersei. All right. And I'm gonna save this. As we move on to the next portion, so creating an antagonist. So some of the checking questions we might ask. So who is your protagonist? You really need to know who your protagonist is before you really start making your antagonist, because your protagonist is really going to inform your who your characters are, who your other characters are in your story. And picking your protagonist, does your protagonist have a sidekick? Those were some of the things that we explored in our previous workshops. So if you haven't seen them yet, go ahead and watch those and make sure that you discover who your protagonist is. And if your protagonist is going to have a sidekick, go ahead and discover who your sidekick character is. All right, so I'll use the example of mine so as we move forward so you can see like where you can get some more inspiration from my perspective of my process of making protagonist character, sidekick character, and now moving into the antagonist character. So I chose inspiration of nature. I love nature. I love wildlife. I love animals. So if you know me, you know I love, love, love ravens. They're my favorite bird. And I just love them. And so one of the things I thought of when I was looking at ravens and I was thinking about making raven characters, I was like, all right, this these I see these ravens all around Los Angeles, and that's really it's really got me interested in them in the first place. But when we looked at folklore before and we are like, what are some that are from your own culture? I thought of that same question. Like, are there ravens in Africa? Like, do they have ravens? Like, is it only these American ravens? Or I know that they have them in Europe, but do they have ravens in Africa so I can actually tell like an African-based story with these birds that I love? And I found out that they do. And there's a raven right here on top of the sign for Kilimanjaro National Park. I found out that they do have them around Kenya and Tanzania. And this mountain, Kilimanjaro, is actually very close to the Kenya-Tanzania border, and you can actually see it from both countries. So I picked this bird, the African white-necked raven. And I was like, yes, I'm so excited that they have this bird, that this bird exists. It was so, I don't know, I was super happy to find out that that this bird actually exists. So I decided I would make my protagonist of this bird species. And my genre is coming of age. And here you see my protagonist character. His name is Chippy. He's a little raven. He's a baby raven. And I think he's absolutely adorable. I mean, you can't say he's not adorable. But this is my raven character. His name is Chippy. So one of the things that I asked you to do with you once you have your protagonist character is to fill out a character reference sheet. So I have these on my website right now. This one is the character reference sheet, the basics. So I actually have multiple versions of this. I have a basics and I have an advanced one in the sketch to story course. So if you want to get this, and I have a free one on my website, but I have both an advanced version of the basics and an advanced character reference sheet in the course. So it's going to be great for you if you want to go ahead and get those. It's on Kickstarter right now, just as a reminder. All right, so let me read this for you so that you know who my chippy is. So, how does he greet? And he says honk. That's how he talks. That's his greeting. That's the way he says hello. So that's the first thing you're going to feel is how does your character say hello? My character says hello by saying honk. And it says, my name is Chippy. My age group is a child. My favorite thing on this planet is to feel love. He's a very loving little bird. And I get really excited when it's time to eat. He's also a hungry bird. I just think that's a cute, cute characteristic in little animal characters, and I just love it when they're always hungry. I think I got that from playing Yoshi a lot when I was a kid. And I get really annoyed when ants try to take my food. So I already am having like these little animals that are already getting on his nerves a little bit. So even if you have a character that's happy all the time, nobody's happy 100% of the time, so something gets on their nerves at some point or another. And so for Chippy, I decided it would be the ants taking his food away. I feel most confident when I flap my wings big. So he's a baby bird. He hasn't learned how to fly yet, but when he tries to flap, he feels really confident. I get really nervous when I try to fly on my own. So because he doesn't know how to fly yet, he does still get nervous when he tries to fly. My guilty pleasure is more food. So that is his guilty pleasure is just having more because he's a little chubby bird. And my dark secret or hidden fear is that I was abandoned in my nest. So that's his little that's his secret from his past. He's embarrassed of that. It's a point it's a sore spot for him. He doesn't like it, but that was a sore spot for him that he was abandoned in his nest. And my dream is to one day be the biggest and bravest raven. So that is the little profile of Chippy. Now you know him a little bit better. His sidekick. For a sidekick, I chose the archetype or the type of sidekick I chose for him is the comedic pessimist. His archetype is the dark poetic soul. So you'll see like there's a whole list of different archetypes in my in the sketch to story course. And obviously Chippy is the wide-eyed naivete. He's just a happy little bird and he just is seeing life for the first time. And my comedic pessimist is Cronky, the African raven. So Cronky is an adult raven. He's a funny character. He kind of gives you that comedic relief, that added comedic relief, but he's also very serious. He doesn't necessarily want to be humorous. He just ends up being humorous because of things just irritating him. Okay, so Cronky as the sidekick. And his greeting is the way he says hello is Kronk. That's one of the fun facts that I learned, or the differences between crows and ravens is that crows will, do a more of a squawking sound, or yeah, more of like a squawking sound, and ravens actually make more of this like a deeper like cronking sound. So I wanted his greeting to be Kronk, and so his name is Cronky. And his age group is adult. And his favorite thing on the planet is solitude. Can you imagine? He just wants to be alone. He doesn't necessarily want to be bothered. But, he ends up like, being a helpful hand to Chippy because he's like, all right, fine. Not necessarily because he wants to, because on the inside, he does have a good heart. Remember, we talked about that with our sidekick characters before. Like, even if they're dark and brooding, they might, something on their inside, still have that soft spot. They're like a crab with a hard shell, but soft on the inside. And he gets really excited when I feel peace and quiet. That's when he feels excited, when he's at peace and he gets to get that nice wind in his feathers. He gets really annoyed when other birds steal my food. So, like if he has his food up in a tree and he comes back to discover it's been taken by the other birds, he is very, very annoyed with that. He feels most confident when he is soaring in the mountains. He loves to soar over Mount Kilimanjaro. That was his original place of living, and he loves that place, and he loves to be soaring through the high, high mountains. He gets really annoyed. I mean, he gets really nervous when larger birds loom over me. He doesn't like, trying other birds trying to intimidate him. He's solitary. A lot of ravens have a partner. They do mate for life, but he is alone. He wants to be alone, and he doesn't like it when he is alone and other birds are trying to intimidate him because of that, or take advantage of him because of that. His My guilty pleasure is finding a carcass. He's a raven after all, and I like to keep that sort of animal side to them, that sort of natural thing to them. Ravens, they do scavenge and they do like to find dead things and eat them. So that is one of the things that is his guilty pleasure. I think it's actually pretty charming because, after all, like I said, he is a raven. His dark secret or hidden fear is that I'm not brave enough. So he does have this little insecurity that perhaps he's not as brave as he would like to be. So that is his bit of his hidden fear or his secret. My dream is to one day live alone. At this point, he likes his solitude and he wants to stay in solitude. So he's like, yeah, let me just be and live alone and I'll be fine. And then unfortunately, Chippy is not making that easy, but obviously he's got a lot of love for Chippy and that will come out. So, creating an antagonist. A checking question for you. Does your protagonist have natural rivals? So, if you're not sure, you might want to think about a quick Google search. And it could be if you're doing an animal character, that's an easy Google search. But if your character is human, you might want to think about what would be their natural, like a little more specific about their role in life. If they're a football player, for instance, obviously, their natural rival would be a player from the opposite team. Or maybe their rival might be a parent that's making them go to all these football practices and they really just want to be an artist. Or let's see, if you have like a nerdy character, their natural rival could be like the jock of the school. Or if you have like some girls that are in a beauty contest, obviously the other competitors would be their natural rivals. So if you do have a human character, there are still natural rivals, and you can just take a moment to think about it. But if your character is an animal, then a quick Google search can help you to determine that. And so I was looking up natural rivals for the African ravens, so that there actually are rivals for ravens. And I was looking at this and I looked and one of the first things that I saw was natural rivals and competitors is large raptors, crowned eagles, martial eagles, and large owls pose a direct aerial threat, often competing for kills and preying on young ravens. All right, so that tells us two major things right there. First of all, that it's going to be getting on Cronky's nerves by trying to steal his food, and it's going to be getting on Chippy's, it's going to be bugging Chippy because Chippy is a baby. He's still a baby raven. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. Let's think about this. Antagonists. Let's keep on moving. Consideration questions. What is a problem that could face your protagonist? What does your protagonist fear the most? And what potential antagonist could you use that fear against them? So for me, looking up this little Google search right here, I wanted to start focusing on the crowned eagle. And when looked it up, I was like, oh yes, this is the jumping off point for my antagonist. I love this guy. And I saw the picture of what these guys actually look like. I was like, oh, I bet. This is perfect. He already looks like an antagonist. Like those little, like the little horns on top of his head, the little horn feathers, and those little eagle lips, those pouty eagle lips are great. And I love that he already has like this angry face already. So perfect. Absolutely perfect. I'm gonna do a couple of poses of this. You can think about what would be a natural rival for your protagonist character? And if you want, if you don't have one yet, you can feel free to sketch along with me in drawing these crowned eagles. But yeah, I want you to keep in mind what would be a natural antagonist for your protagonist character. So we're gonna do 5-minute poses for this, and we'll see how many we can do. We are almost at time, but I think that we can do at least two and just start to think about drawing our antagonists. We're gonna do, especially, I mean, regardless if you have a human character or a animal character, highly, highly, highly recommend that you draw them in realistic form first before you start to caricature them into a character. I always do like some realism photos first to really understand the character first, to really understand the animal, even if you're doing a human, to understand a bit of what you're drawing before you start to go into the caricature phase. You really want to get a good idea first because you don't know what you're caricaturizing if you don't study what it is that you're drawing first. So definitely you want to study the real thing before you get into other aspects, more complicated aspects like cartooning. All right, so some things to think about. What is a problem that your protagonist could face? And you're really going to be thinking based upon your the reference sheet that we already did for your character, or if you did that already, you want to think, all right, using that as a reference point of like, all right, what could be a problem for for this particular character? Because a problem for one character is not necessarily a problem for another type of character that doesn't have the same wants, needs, desires, and wishes for life. Um, Understanding your character is the basis of giving them a problem to deal with. And what are stories? Stories are really about problems. When it comes down to it, a story is about a problem. So the protagonist is facing some type of a problem and they either, succeed at the end or they don't. And if they succeed, it's like that's a traditional type of story, but if they don't succeed, that's what you call a tragedy. When a hero fails, that's a tragedy, in literal sense. So when I think about my protagonist, Chippy, what a potential problem could be for him is that, um, first of all, he could be hunted. He could be hunted, just for existing, because after all, he has this natural predator that hunts him just because of his age. So just because of his age, he could be hunted. So what could that create? What could that create? He could be like, all right, well, I'm being hunted. I really need someone to protect me. I really need someone to protect me, and I really need to get stronger myself. Because if I stay, you know, vulnerable, then I'm more likely to get caught. More likely to get caught. So when you're in this stage of like thinking, you can think of multiple different types of scenarios, multiple different problems that could happen for your protagonist. Okay, let me make this a little bit smaller so I can expand his head shape. All right. And this guy really, what else could be a potential problem for Chippy? It could be that he can't find food, like for whatever reason. He was abandoned. That was one of the things that I thought up in my original character reference sheet. So What if he's abandoned and now he doesn't know how to get food? So that could be and also a whole journey for him. Like, all right, I'm abandoned in my nest. How do I find food before I die? Because baby birds are reliant on their parents to bring them food. So what does a protagonist character do when they are stuck, and they cannot forage or they're lost? He could be lost in the forest. What if he loses what if he builds this relationship with with his friend there, Cronky, but then he gets lost in the forest somehow and then he's hunted. So I could make a potentially a couple of different ways that this could happen. You know what I'm saying? Or what if he's picked up by like a tourist? He is an animal after all, and he's cute. What if he's picked up and he gets separated somehow? There could be a storm. The fact that he lives in nature can be potential for a storm can happen and he can end up being like not able to find food and still be hunted. Apparently, I really like the idea, the hunting concept. I think that's a big part of where I think this antagonist falls in. It could be that he's just in bird high school and that and maybe there's like a there's like this other bird there that's like bullying him in the hallways. I mean, you can humanize them in that sense too, and create like human scenarios even for animal characters. So those are potentially a couple of different things that I could do with my antagonists and protagonists. All right, that's our first pose. We're gonna do just one more pose because we're already out of time. I mean, it's so fast. But I do want to do one full body. So I'm going to go ahead and do a full body of this guy here. We only have, let's see, we'll do a 5-minute pose. But I want to do at least one full body of this bird. And when you get into the caricature phase, um, you want to think about how you can expand upon their natural qualities. What is it about them that you can really exaggerate? And I think I will be working on an antagonist character this week, and I will show you my process next week when we pick up again. And I'm going to be going into let's see, we only have 3 weeks left, so I'm going to be looking into getting into worlds next week. So the environment that they live in, I mean, that's a really big important part of your storytelling process. So we really need to know where your characters are living and understand that environment. So I will um, between this week and next and between this workshop and next workshop, I will create the antagonist. But next week, I will show you the process so you'll have a better understanding. But I do want you to go ahead and give it your best and really see what you can do. Really see what you can do. First, study the real thing. Don't skip that part. It's important that you understand the real look, just like we looked at um, those actual human uh, antagonists in film to start with so that you can see some of the real examples before you start to do the caricature part because like I said, I don't want you to skip that step. And then we will caricature and use some of those elements that we discovered in drawing those actual human antagonists and see if we can incorporate some of those. See if we can incorporate aspects of that into our antagonist character. We're doing a caricature version, but we still want to see what we can incorporate from those actual physical humans. All right. One thing I'm already noticing about these birds, and I've never drawn these particular eagles before, is that they have incredibly long legs. Look how long the legs are. I mean, they're huge. They really have like some incredible legs. Like I'm jealous. I need some long legs like this. No. Oh gosh, that's hilarious. But anyway, make sure that you start to notice what are the traits of the actual thing. Okay. That way you can really play with them. And it makes the cartooning part a lot more fun. It makes the caricature more fun when you're using those elements. All right. Okay. And how can you, what's another question I brought from before? Which is your protagonist fear the most? Losing love. So it could be that he could be afraid of losing even he could be afraid of losing Cronky because what happens if Cronky is surrounded by like a gang of these guys, birds fight each other and you might see how birds, especially raptor birds and I think that, ravens fall into birds of prey. They are also birds of prey, but they might it might be that one injures another, you know what I'm saying? So you might think about like or he could be hurt protecting Chippy, which that makes me even sad to think about. It's almost like when you see like in the film like the animals fighting and you're like, no, don't let them fight. You don't want them to get hurt, but it does bring an emotional side. It makes your audience feel invested when you do things, when you have scenes that are difficult. It does, even though they're difficult, it does get your audience even more invested, and you have to decide as the writer and the creator of what you're making, how far you want to go, what it is, what are those feelings that you want to bring out in your audience? What are the feelings of fear that you want to bring out? How far? Do you want it to be very scary or you just want it to be a little bit scary? Think about all of those things. And you can make a little bit of a branch here for him to be perching on. And all right, and scene. I think that is all the time that we have for today. I'm just going to give him a little bit of shading down here just for some contrast. All right, so we have the very beginnings. I would say do about between 5 and 10 realistic drawings before you even go into your caricature version. I just think, yeah, it's a little bit tedious and it's does take time, but it's important. It's important, and you're gonna have characters that are stronger and that feel more believable when you get to that. So let's go ahead and save. Okay, now. And just look at that face. Oh my God. The little bird lips are hilarious to me. So I'm gonna be having fun with my little reference drawing. And oh my gosh, it killed a monkey. Yeah. It's so sad. It's like, oh my gosh, this is like the ultimate antagonist. All right. So I also have here a character reference sheet. So it's important that you're gonna for our challenge of this week. So, week 5, introducing your antagonist. So, the first part is discover a scenario. Think about a problem for your protagonist that they must face. You're going to consider the traits of your character that you identified in the character reference sheet for your protagonist and just kind of brainstorm. And you can think of more than one, but brainstorm what would be the worst case scenario. I'd say more than one because sometimes when we just think of just one, we put too much pressure. So just brainstorm and jot down with a pencil, even if to take off even more pressure, like, what could be a possible case scenario. And just as I listed a couple of options for Chippy, you want to think of a couple of options for your protagonist. And you're going to identify your protagonist's ideal outcome for the scenario. So if everything works out the best for your protagonist, what does that look like? What is your protagonist envisioning as, I really hope that it ends like this. That is your character's want. So that's going to be what your protagonist is going to be rooting for throughout the story. That's what they're going to be fighting for. That's what they're going to be trying to get to. That's going to be the journey that they're going on. Okay, so you want to identify what that is. The second part is it's time to antagonize. Okay, so who will get in your protagonist's way? Yes, you need to create your antagonist. It's time. So consider natural rivals. Who is already a threat to your protagonist? And will you use an untraditional antagonist, like a force of nature and an authority figure? Maybe it's a friend that turned to a rival, so it could be the same species as they are, but maybe they're power hungry, like in a Game of Thrones type of scenario, or maybe they want to take over like the city, the country, the school. Or is it a supernatural force? Maybe it's a spirit, maybe it's an evil spirit, or some sort of a monster character that is trying to disrupt or throw off your protagonist in some way. You're going to download, if you haven't already, the character reference sheet basics, which is on the website, aliciadianne.com. This is the free version. All right. And there's also, if you get the sketch to story on Kickstarter, if you're watching this afterwards, if you get this on the website for Sankofa Animation Network, then you can get the basics and the advanced version, which is going to give you even more detail about your characters. So anyway, you can go to aliciadianne.com right now and get the character reference sheets basics. It will show up as a pop-up. And you can go ahead and put that in there, put all the details in there for both your protagonists, your sidekick, and your antagonist. Make sure you know who your characters are, because that is going to be your key to be able to write for them and to be able to create stories for them. Knowing your characters is essential. So make sure that you do that. And you can share it right here on the Discord for Sankofa Animation Network. If you scan the QR, then you go to Event, Art, and Photos channel, you can share your work for the challenges. And we are on challenge number 5. Finally, 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 this is the last couple of weeks, guys. I think there's only like how many weeks left? We're ending on what, the 30th or the 31st? Yeah, it's gonna be coming up soon. We're ending at the end of this month for Kickstarter. Sketch to story, creative writing for visual artists. I can't tell you how valuable this is. It's really going to be up to you if you want to create your own content. If that's something that's valuable to you, being able to write your own stories, being able to create interesting and in-depth characters and give them scenarios and just bring them through and kind of bring them through in interesting ways and understand stories so it's not confusing to you anymore. I'm telling you, this is going to be a great resource for you. It's my gift to the art world. So if you would like to be able to tell your own stories, have your own content, this is a resource that is for you. So it's on Kickstarter right now, and use the QR code and you'll be able to find it. Alrighty, that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining the Sketch to Story Creative Writing for Visual Artists Drawing Workshops, our VIP workshops. This has been week 5. I am Alicia Dianne. It's been my pleasure to learn and draw and sketch with you and just talk about storytelling in an in-depth way and in a meaningful way. And I hope this has been helpful for you. So I will see you next time. But until then, be grateful, live balanced, and be yourself, and keep on creating. Bye-bye.